Yeah. And I'll just sit nearby to take care of the computer stuff. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. There's a plug there if you need. Behind.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Could I have that one volume Bhagavatam? Obviously not. So, Govinda asked me to give class, and he said I can give class on any verse I wanted to.
Go for it.
So, this is from the third canto. There's actually one copy right there. I want to draw from that. Whoever wants to read from them. There's another copy in the kitchen, third canto, chapter 23, text 55. We didn't get it up on the board, but that's okay. Also, if you have phones.
Chapter 23.
Yeah, 3:23:55. And the reason I chose this verse is because I was asking devotees what they want to hear about. And what I heard was spiritualizing relationships. So that's our topic, spiritualizing human relationships. You can also work with human dog. So we'll talk about 3:23:55. And I'll, as usual, we'll go through the verse word for word and purport. I'll give some context because this is like for many people, random part of the Bhagavatam. It's a very beautiful section. Everybody there, or you're good? Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So someone's asking what verse? It's verse 55.
3:23:55.
3:23:55.
Bhagavatam.
Should start Sango Yah Samsute Hetu. And please, come in closer. I find that classes in kirtan and a lot of other good things, prasadam, are more engaging.
Intimate.
Yeah. I don't bite. I'm vegetarian. Hare Krishna. So, Canto 3, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 23, text 55. And in this section, we're experiencing what's called Devahuti's lamentation. Devahuti was a princess, daughter of Swayambhu Manu, right? And she was raised also with great spiritual culture. And her husband, Kardama, was a great devotee. And now after some time of, their marriage, being together and serving him faithfully, and then having children and having the ideal material life, she's experiencing lamentation because she felt that I haven't taken full advantage of your association as a devotee and of my life. I haven't gotten the spiritual advantage that I wanted. This whole chapter is her lamentation. And this verse is one of my favorites. It's actually repeated later in the third canto. So we'll go through the chanting in word for word. Sango yas samsuter hetur
Samgoya samsmitehetur.
Asatsu vihito thiya.
Asatsu vihitoya.
Saiva sadhu shukrito.
Saeva sadhu shukrito.
Nisangatvaya kalpate.
Nisangatvaya kalpate.
Sangoya samsriter hetur.
Samgoya samsmitehetur.
Asatsu vihito thiya.
Asatsu vihitoya.
Saiva sadhu shukrito.
Saeva sadhu shukrito.
Nisangatvaya kalpate.
Nisangatvaya kalpate.
Sangoya samsriter hetur.
Samgoya samsmitehetur.
Asatsu vihito thiya.
Asatsu vihitoya.
Saiva sadhu shukrito.
Saeva sadhu shukrito.
Nisangatvaya kalpate.
Nisangatvaya kalpate.
They like to chant.
Sangoya samsmiter hetur.
Sangoya
samsmitehetur.
Asatsu vihito diya.
Asatsu vihitoya.
Saeva sadhu shukrito.
Saeva sadhu shukrito.
Nisangatvaya kalpate.
Nisangatvaya kalpate. Sangoya samsmitehetur.
Sangoya samsmitehetur.
Asatsu vihitoya.
Asatsu vihitoya.
Saeva sadhu shukrito.
Saeva sadhu shukrito.
Nisangatvaya kalpate.
Nisangatvaya kalpate.
Sangoya samsmitehetur.
Sangoya samsmitehetur.
Asatsu vihitoya.
Asatsu vihitoya.
Saeva sadhu shukrito.
Saeva sadhu shukrito.
Nisangatvaya kalpate.
Nisangatvaya kalpate.
Word for word. Sangaha,
Sangaha.
association.
Association.
Yaha,
Yaha.
which.
Which.
Samsritehe,
Samsmitehe.
of the cycle of birth and death.
Of the cycle of birth and death.
Hetuhu,
Hetu.
the cause.
The cause.
Asatsu,
Asatsu.
with those engaged in sense gratification.
With those engaged in sense gratification.
Vihitaha,
Vihitaha.
done.
Done.
Patiya,
Patiya.
through ignorance.
Through ignorance.
Saha,
Saha.
the same thing.
The same thing.
Eva,
Eva.
certainly.
Certainly.
Sadhushu,
Sadhushu.
with saintly persons.
With saintly persons.
Kritaha,
Pita.
performed.
Performed.
Nisangatvaya,
Nisangatvaya.
to liberation.
To liberation.
Kalpate,
Kalpate.
leads.
Leads.
I'll give you a couple verses before this to give some context. She's speaking to her husband. He's about to take sannyas and go off and spend the rest of his life just in a solitary way. This was understood before they got married, that he would provide for her and they would have time together to create children and raise them. And then he was going to retire, basically. So now she says, until now, we have simply wasted so much of our time in sense gratification, neglecting to cultivate knowledge of the Supreme Lord. Not knowing your transcendental situation, I have loved you while remaining attached to the objects of the senses. Nonetheless, let the affinity I have developed for you rid me of all fear. In today's verse, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Association for sense gratification is certainly the path of bondage. But the same type of association performed with a saintly person leads to the path of liberation, even if performed without knowledge. Would you like to repeat?
Association for sense gratification is certainly the path of bondage, but the same type of association performed with a saintly person leads to the path of liberation, even if performed without knowledge.
Jai. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The association of a saintly person in any way bears the same result. For example, Lord Krishna met many kinds of living entities, and some treated him as an enemy, and some treated him as an agent for sense gratification. It is generally said that the gopis were attached to Krishna for sense attractions, and yet they became first-class devotees of the Lord. Kamsa, Shishupala, Dantavakra, and other demons, however, were related to Krishna as enemies. But whether they associated with Krishna as enemies or for sense gratification, out of fear, or as pure devotees, they all got liberation. That is a result of association with the Lord. Even if one does not understand who he is, the results have the same efficacy. Association with a great saintly person also results in liberation. Just as whether one goes toward fire knowingly or unknowingly, the fire will make one warm. Devahuti expressed her gratefulness, for although she wanted to associate with Kardama Muni only for sense gratification, because he was spiritually great, she was sure to be liberated by his benediction. Om Ajnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch lamp of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are just like desire trees, and fulfill the desires of everyone, and are full of compassion for the fallen formation souls. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna to our online Sangha. So good to see all of you. We feel your presence and we're grateful. So as I was saying, the request I got, because I was open to what Krishna had to say, and Krishna speaks through his devotees. What I heard was the topic that the devotee wanted to hear about is spiritualizing relationships. So Prabhupada, well, first we'll say that Devahuti has recognized the fundamental truth that the people that we associate with and how we associate with them makes a big difference in our lives, especially the quality of their consciousness. And she's noting that actually association for sense gratification is certainly the path of bondage, that you become who you associate with, you become your company. There's an expression, show me, what is it? Show me like the 5 people closest to you and I'll show you who you are, who you become. You know, Prabhupada's kind of pet mantra around this was, if you want to become a drunk, you associate with drunkards. It's very easy. You just simply develop the habits that they have and you can become a drunk and wake up, you know, after passing out, do the drunkard thing. And if you want to become a lover of God, you associate with lovers of God and you also develop the same qualities. Because we're actually permeable. Qualities, they enter the heart and they change us. And association is actually one of the fundamental things that Lord Chaitanya said, 5 most important things, in boiling down the 64 angas or limbs of devotional service. So there's 5 most important. So I might be able to remember the Bengali. Sadhu Sangha, Nama Kirtan, Bhagavata Shravan, Mathur Bash, Shimurtira Shataya Shevana. So these 5 things. Sadhu Sangha, associating with saintly persons, devotees, persons whose goals are spiritual and they're living their life according to that. Nam Kirtan, chanting Krishna's names. Bhagavad Shravan, hearing the Bhagavatam and related devotional scriptures, and serving the deity with faith and living in a holy place. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that the root cause of devotional service is association with devotees, in this life or previously. The process actually begins with faith and manifests as a sense that this is good. I like what these people are doing. I like that this is a spiritual process. I want to engage. And then one becomes sadhu sangha. You associate more closely with spiritual people. And you take up a regulated practice yourself. And the root cause of that cycle that actually takes one out of the material cycle is the mercy of a devotee. The scripture was spoken by devotees. The names of Krishna are spoken by devotees. Prasadam is offered and distributed by devotees. every manifestation of Krishna deities are worshipped and manifested through the mercy of devotees. Everything that's available for us to experience Krishna through is manifested through the mercy of devotees. And that's why it's Vaishnavism. It's the ism of Vaishnavas. And so this is a science actually of association, the science of receptivity. Bhakti is ultimately the science of receptivity. And Devahuti has a very real situation here, very kind of like down to earth. She has a husband. She loved him dearly. She served him very, very faithfully. They were very pious. And yet she had a lot of material desires. She was honest about that. But they fulfilled those material desires within the context of a spiritual relationship. But still, she was holding on to these material desires. And her goal in life was to satisfy them. And that's really the default for people in the material world. That's not unusual. We should understand that's what we're working with. This is a place for people to work out their desire to try to live a separate existence from their actual real existence of being connected to Krishna. And there are basically three things that you can do, therefore. You can try to do that in an unregulated way, just make up your own idea of how you want to live, how you want to gratify your senses. And that's actually a kind of animal life. It's not really human life, because human life doesn't really begin until you start to regulate how you gratify your senses. Because in the first situation, let's say I want to eat. If I go into a store, I'm like, I'm gonna eat that, and start eating it right there, it's a problem. It's a problem. And more is expected of me. If Manny, right? If Manny walks into a grocery store and starts sniffing and eating things, no one really holds it against him, because that's his nature. He's just doing his thing. But human being can regulate themselves around the objects of the senses. I want to eat, I want to have these kinds of interactions, and I do it in a responsible way. So responsibility is what differentiates just akarma, or vicious kind of self-directed, unregulated life, from karma, which is that, okay, I have these material desires to fulfill. How do I do it in a way that doesn't totally pollute me and everyone else? But higher than that, actually, is to live according to the devotional perspective. Because the devotional perspective isn't about gratifying one's senses as the goal. If you live a devotionally oriented life, which is what Devahuti is realizing she wanted and wants, and she's feeling the urgency because her husband is about to leave, to retire, to be a wandering mendicant on his own. And she's thinking, well, I've never taken advantage of your spiritual position as a devotee. We were husband and wife, we were this and that, but I never took advantage of the spiritual knowledge, and now I really want to. I've realized. And this is also practical, because often when one follows a regulated lifestyle in the mode of goodness, they're pious, they're not interested in degrading themselves whimsically. If they associate with people who have a higher idea, a devotional idea, they'll recognize, because of their not being polluted so much by the lower modes, that there is something higher to life. It's not just about satisfying these desires. And maybe I've actually satisfied so many desires already, and it wasn't enough. It's not enough. It doesn't touch the soul. There is no combination of senses and sense objects that per se can touch the soul. My capacity for love, my capacity to give, for joy is greater than what these experiences can give me. So what can you give me, saintly person, devotee? They become receptive. And this is her teachable moment. She's recognized that I've had the perfect life as a wife, as a mother. I've had the perfect upbringing, great devotee father and mother too. And I've had all the things that someone could want from the material world, and I still feel like my heart wants more. There's still room. There's something categorically different to have an experience. What is it? This teachable moment. So now she's asking, can you help me? And she's made this point that normally just being with other people for material purposes is exactly the reason why we become degraded. But I understand that the same thing works in reverse. The downward spiral can become an upward spiral. If we associate with people who have higher values than us, we become attracted upward. So we're going to talk about spiritualizing relationships. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 8 through 12, there's 5 verses on the principles of knowledge, 20 different items. Krishna says the principles of knowledge. And starts with humility, pridelessness, and goes on. And one of them is actually detachment from children, spouse, and home. And in the purport, Prabhupada elaborates on this. And he says that, well, I'll start with the end of the purport to kind of clarify. He says, if one can mold their family life in this way, which I'll describe the way, to develop Krishna consciousness, following these 4 principles, then there's no need to change from family life to renounce life. But if it's not congenial, not favorable for spiritual advancement, then family life should be abandoned. Normally, the default is that people just associate for material reasons. They go with the impulses of the mind. And that's a cause for, as Devhuti is saying, just getting stuck in the material world, developing karma, and not really remembering your position as a spiritual being, and forgetting, being covered with forgetfulness. But Prabhupada says in the purport, as for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should not have feeling for these. They are natural objects of affection. The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy, because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. And he gives 4 things to do. One need only chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna. You don't have to talk anybody into that. The prasadam. Have some discussion on books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in deity worship. Prabhupada said deity worship can be as simple as having a picture of the Panchatattva and chanting Hare Krishna to serve them. And that's what we're doing. And that's absolutely part of this principle. It focuses one's energy. It focuses the offerings of food you're making, focuses one's devotion. And these 4 things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. The family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And if it's favorable, then there's no need. There's actually no spiritual reason why one cannot make advancement in that situation. So it's about actually turning it into a place of spiritual upliftment. In the verse in the first canto that has my name is Samyaprasa, and Samyaprasa is the name of Vyasadev's ashram where he spoke the Bhagavatam. In that purport 172, Prabhupada says that it's only a matter of formality that these sannyasis or renunciates are given more respect, or like formal respect, than those who serve in spiritual life in a home with spouse and children. Because actually anybody can create a spiritual environment. He talks about spiritualizing your environment. 172, if you want to look at that purport sometime. It's very encouraging because the vast majority of people in any age, actually, including ours, demographically are not going to be renunciates. I was a monk for the last 7.5 years until two weeks ago, and made the transition to the demographic majority. And my aim in life remains the same, living a spiritual life. Many of my gurus and teachers and mentors, great Bhaktivinoda Thakur as an example, are devotees who lived in the world and had the same devotional standard as any great devotee outside the flow of, paying bills and taking care of children and so forth. And the example is there. So Prabhupada's giving us a little sketch here. One other piece of evidence that I like to give, which I've been meditating on recently, because I actually received my saffron cloth as a monk on the disappearance day of Srila Gaura Das Babaji Maharaj. His picture is also there. The spiritual master of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who's himself a spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. And he was very much outside the flow of the world. He was a Babaji. He just really did nothing but think about Radha and Krishna, chant their names. And he was very simple, didn't require anything, didn't even ask for food. If it came, it came. And still, because he was a saintly person, a gentleman who just gotten married but wanted to live a spiritual life came to him and said, "Okay, Babaji Maharaj, I've just married, and I want your advice, want your blessings." So he said, "Oh, okay." So what you'd think that somebody in that situation would have nothing to say, but he had something very relevant. He said, "Okay, so you've married a Krishna Dasi, a servant of Krishna, a Vaishnavi. This is a very rare situation. You should always view your wife as being a servant of Krishna. Never try to enjoy her for yourself. You should serve food to Krishna and make these offerings of bhoga, and then take the prasad and serve your wife. And then you should take her remnants. In devotional culture, taking the remnants of somebody is a way of offering respect and submission. So you should take the remnants of your wife, right? This is reversing the natural order in a traditional culture that the husband is the senior. Typically, you say, no. This is not about male, female. This is about you should always view your partner as a devotee and treat them as such. And that way you'll never be trapped by the desire to exploit them in a subtle sense. Maybe if you're a human, you're not exploiting anybody in the gross sense. That's what animals do. That's what criminals do. But in a subtle sense, you're engaged in a business deal as long as you're trying to, I'll give you your sense gratification, as long as you give me my sense gratification. And that is why, as Prabhupada points out, relationships in mature consciousness end like that. Because as soon as my sense gratification is cut off, there's a problem, fundamental problem about a relationship. Whether that's romantic, whether it's fraternal, brotherly, parental, it doesn't matter. With your boss, like, oh, you don't have money for me? You're not going to pay my wage? I don't care about you. Or that you work for them for 40 years and they don't have room for you anymore. Bye. Security will escort you out the door. Day before your retirement plan. There's no loyalty, there's no feeling, there's nothing. It ends because you're not doing it for me anymore. It meaning gratifying my senses. So he's saying, no, don't operate on that principle. Operate on the principle of service to a devotee. The fundamental difference. Can someone get me a copy of Nectar of Instruction? Is it maybe here? No. There's one in there.
Yeah, on the shelf. There's many. Hey, Rachel.
Hare Krishna.
I just wanted to say,
Yeah.
I think you meant like vikarma instead of akarma, vicious, unregulated.
Yes, you're right. That's karma.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Our karma is
Hare Krishna. So, the Nectar of Instruction, one of my favorite books. I think Prabhu was saying, you said it's your favorite book, right? I think I've heard you say that.
I reference it a lot. It's so much of what we're doing self-hypnosis is based on that.
Yeah, it's such a condensed manual. Srila Rupa Goswami, one of our most important acharyas, has given us, I think, 11 verses only. It just comes to 11, summarizing the totality of spiritual life. And in the fourth verse, it says, "Didati pratigrahnati gohyam akhyati prichiti bhongte bhojate chaiva shagradam priti lakshana." It says there's 6 symptoms of love. There's 6 ways in which devotees express care. It says offering gifts and charity, accepting the charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, and inquiring confidentially. Accepting prasadam and offering prasad, so that you see the reciprocal. These are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. Now, it's a long purport, but in this purport, Srila Prabhupada says, whenever there's a dealing of priti or love in intimate dealings, these 6 activities are executed. In the previous verse, verse 3, Rupa Goswami advised that one should renounce worldly association and keep company with the devotees, which is exactly what Devahuti is saying. That I recognize, my dear husband, that associating with people with a desire for sense gratification, it degrades you. If you have that desire, you get degraded. If you don't, and they do, you also get degraded because you'll inherit that. But the same association with devotees uplifts one. Now, Prabhupada gives a very, very powerful sentence here. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness has been established to facilitate these 6 kinds of loving exchanges between devotees. If you ever want to know the purpose for ISKCON, for this Hare Krishna movement, as Prabhupada gave it to us, it is to facilitate these 6 kinds of loving exchanges. Because that he considered so fundamental. Rupa Goswami too. In 11 verses, he's given us a summary of everything that Lord Chaitanya came to give, the whole Vedas, all the Upanishads, in 11 verses, and one of them is this verse about loving exchanges. So that's also a big clue about how to spiritualize our relationships, because everyone is always giving and receiving. The contents of their heart, their words, their cooking, their food, gifts can be like gifts of service, can be gifts of material things, whatever. These are the fabric that keep people together. And if these things are centered around Krishna, around spiritual life, then it's a very, very powerful thing. He says here, the society was started single-handedly, Srila Prabhupada, But because people are coming forward and dealing with the give and take policy, the society is now expanding all over the world. We are glad that people are donating very liberally to the development of the society's activities. And people are also eagerly accepting whatever humble contributions we are giving them in the shape of books and magazines, dealing strictly with the subject matter of Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada's give and take was, he's giving in the Bhagavatam, he's giving lecture of instruction, he's giving class, he's giving the Hare Krishna mantra, prasadam, and he's creating a situation where people can receive that. We sometimes hold Hare Krishna festivals. I mean, sometimes is modest. Take a look at our calendar. It's the most action-packed calendar let's ever see. And invite like members and friends to participate in the feasting by accepting prasad. Although most of our members come from the higher rungs of society, they nonetheless come and take whatever little prasad we're able to offer them. Sometimes the members and supporters inquire very confidentially about the methods of performing devotional service, and we try to explain this. In this way, our society is successfully spreading all over the world. And the intelligentsia are gradually appreciating it. The Krishna Consciousness Society's life is nourished by these 6 types of loving exchanges. So he's giving this point in the context of presenting Krishna to people who are maybe new, but it's as relevant within the context of, okay, well, I'm a practicing devotee with other practicing devotees, or I want to have a spiritual, marriage, or I want to have a spiritual relationship with my parents, my friends, and so forth, my boss even. These are some of the points. So I've quoted, Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada, Rupa Goswami, Gaura Krishna Das Babaji Maharaj. I referenced in passing Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This is not a detail. This is very much a principle that our acharyas have been aware of. We have material desires to work out, even as devotees, but we're not just doing that in a pious way. We're doing that in a way where our relationships are fundamentally about getting free from material desires and turning our attention to God. And while we're doing that, we're eating nice food. We're having like loving relationships with people. That's there. It's human. We have a human life as well, and we're not just cutting it off artificially. And the majority of people aren't going to be living in renounced lives formally either, and that's okay. But there's a way to spiritualize one's human relationships. So I'll just go over what I've spoken about so far, and I'd like to get reflections. I really feel like reflections, speaking of the give and take policy, reflections are really, they're my class, the class that I receive from all of you. They nourish me and they bring everybody together in my experience. Reflection means anything I said that stood out that you'll remember. You can ask questions, give comments, talk about your own experiences in life, about being degraded by material association, uplifted by spiritual association, the media in which that happens, like the forms, your first time taking prasadam, whatever it may be. And we can kind of flesh out this point of how to spiritualize our relationships. Such a deep and important point, because we're not impersonalists. It's a fundamental point of Bhagavad Gita. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtati karmakrit. Karyate yavashah karma sarva prakriti jayavana. You can't be standing still. You can't be doing nothing, even for a moment. 3.5 Bhagavad Gita. You're always active. That's true in our material condition, and it's true in our spiritual condition. We don't waste time trying to do nothing. We don't waste time trying to be nothing. We're just trying to turn our being and our doing and our tasting and enjoying towards Krishna, and it becomes, first of all, much better, much more sweet and delicious, and then ultimately liberating, truly liberating. So to summarize, we talked about how there's vikarma, the vicious life of unregulated sense gratification. I take what I want, and if I'm strong enough to take it from you, deal with it. Might makes right. There's karma, which is the pious, regulated form of sense gratification, human life. And there's akarma, freedom from the cycle of birth and death because of spiritualizing our relationships. We talked about Prabhupada's guidance in the 13:8 to 12 purport of Bhagavad Gita. 4 things: chant Hare Krishna, take prasadam, serve the deity, and have readings, have discussions of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. And notice he uses the word discussion again. This is again a pattern that it's important to hear, but it's also really important to have a place to express your doubts, have a place to kind of like learn how to apply Bhagavad Gita in your life. This is where I'm at, I have these desires, or this is my situation. How does this work for me? So discussion. So it actually becomes relevant and realized. Those 4 things. We heard about obviously Devahuti's specific situation, she had the ideal wife and mother life, and it wasn't enough for the soul. She was bright enough and pious enough and developed enough to realize, I didn't take advantage of your associations, the devotee and your husband. Please help me to do that now. And we talked about Gaura Das Babaji Maharaj's advice, even from the most renounced position. He came in, he gave advice to this new groom. Okay, yeah, you're married, that's very good. Actually, your situation is very rare. You've married a Krishna Dasi, a servant of Krishna. Always see her as such, treat her as such, and serve Krishna with faith and veneration and give her the remnants, and then you take her remnants. Never try to be the enjoyer of that situation. And we heard from the Nectar of Instruction, based on Rupa Goswami's realization that these 6 things, giving and receiving prasad, opening one's heart and receiving that, and the giving and receiving of gifts, centered around Krishna. This is the life of Krishna consciousness movement, says Srila Prabhupada. This is why it was established. So now, anything that stood out for you, reflections, comments, questions? Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Material things don't touch the soul.
Material things don't touch the soul. Yeah.
The senses don't touch the soul.
Yeah.
So evidence. I have experience. And I keep trying. They don't touch the soul.
Yeah. I think we heard that this morning. Prabhupada was saying that this eye is not capable of seeing Krishna. It's, you take it out, you can't experience. It's because it's just a sense. The heart experiences Krishna, the soul experiences Krishna. And you can spiritualize these senses, but they themselves, there's nothing about matter that's fundamentally, going to touch this. 7.5 and 7.6 Bhagavad Gita, they're 2 different kinds of categories.
She's trying for 41 years.
I've been trying for much longer than that. I'm only 40. I turn 41 next month. I've been trying for many lives, and I would keep trying if it weren't for the devotees and their better idea. Thank you. Anything else that stood out, or comments, questions?
I like the 6 symptoms of love.
The 6 symptoms of love.
I like how the word symptoms is used. It's like in healthcare, we think, oh my gosh, like you have an illness, these are the symptoms.
Yeah, you can diagnose.
Yeah, and I think that's really beautiful. And I really like how it's the 3 things, and it's about giving and receiving 3 things. Yeah, that was really lovely.
Yeah, I appreciate that point, because it's actually 2 really powerful points. One is that it's actually 3 things that Rupa Goswami gives us, but each one has 2 sides to it, because they're relational. It's not about the thing you're doing itself. It's about the thing and the 2 people or more that are relating over that thing. So there's always more than one perspective, just giving and receiving. And those words are very interesting, because receiving is different than taking. Taking is like the material context, and receiving is very respectful and loving. It nourishes realization of the other person as a unique being. And giving also has to be personal. You don't force it on anybody. You offer and you receive. And the other point that I heard in what you were saying is that it's a symptom. It's a symptom, and that's really relevant, because I give this example. I'm really fond of this example. If I say to you, Vishnu, let's say Vishnu has an inflamed appendix. It's not a life-threatening condition unless you don't do anything about it. There's a simple kind of surgery you can do to get rid of the appendix, and you're fine. But if I say, Vishnu, I love you. I really love you. And so I'm going to operate on you and take out your appendix. You'll say, well, Samyaprasa, thanks, buddy. Can you show me your degree from medical college, surgical qualifications? Because you want to know that you have the symptoms to do something about that love. Prabhupada translated Krishna consciousness as devotional service, not just devotion. Devotional service. Devotion is in the heart, and the service manifests externally the devotion. This is a symptom that there's love, because you're doing something about the feeling you have. If I really love Vishnu, I'd go to medical school. Or, practically, I point to a better, more qualified person. I'd be like, don't put a scalpel in my hand. I can't do that for you. But I can offer love as a devotee, because I'm becoming Krishna woman, qualified to do that. So there's a process of being qualified to love. Anybody can feel, the great tyrants of the world felt something for their empires. They felt something for their children and wives. Where do they get them? Where do they get the people around them? not for it degraded them, actually, but because they did something. People who actually, spiritual people who do something about that feeling of love become qualified to act on love, and they exhibit the symptoms of that. Srila Prabhupada, the first chapter of the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita is a lifetime in preparation. He showed what it's like to become qualified, study scripture, dedicate yourself to the holy name, spiritualize your consciousness in so many ways. Of course, in his case, it's a lila, but he's showing us what it looks like for us to be in preparation, to be qualified to love. So when he comes here, he gives these hopeless people their experience of causeless, love in the Bowery. They couldn't even have a human life, and he's treating them as spiritual beings, and that's, you can't fake that. You can't fake Prabhupada waiting in line for the bathroom with everybody else, because he didn't expect them to recognize that he's a saint, and even an elderly gentleman who deserves recognition. No, they're like animals. Yeah, so he just put up with it because it's about love. So the symptoms are there. He lives according to them, and devotees show the symptoms. That's how you know that they love. There's certain things that can't be faked. In fact, on this point, Madhvacharya says in a commentary to a famous verse in the 10th canto, 11th canto, it's about transcendental ecstasy and chanting Hare Krishna. In his purport to that, he says there's two things you can't fake as symptoms of very high advancement in devotional life. Because you can fake a lot of things, and you can also cover up a lot of things. So either I don't have the thing that I'm pretending to have, and I pretend I have it, or I do have some great devotional advancement and I cover it up so no one can see it. Like Prabhupada wouldn't burst out into tears very often about Krishna. It happened from time to time in kirtan. He's displayed transcendental, being stunned in ecstasy. But two things you can't cover up and you can't fake. One, steadiness in service, absolute steadiness in service. If somebody shows up over and over and over again, they don't have to say anything. They've done the work. Like Mother Nindra in Denver for 40 years distributed books every single day, worshiping deities every morning. She doesn't have to say anything. She just is a saint, and anybody who's around her can see that because she's steady. The second thing is Mukhya Prasad. Everything that comes out of their mouth is prasad. It's mercy. It's good for you. It uplifts you. Whatever they have to say, it's never to serve their ego. Even if they have to be hard as a service, like perhaps they're a guru in some way, they're acting to cut away your attachments. They do it out of service. They use their temper. They don't lose their temper. So all of which is to support your point that, loving is very good. It's natural for the soul. But then if we become qualified to show our love in practical ways as devotees, that's what is a real symptom. And that's what makes the house a home. That's what makes the wife and husband a devotee couple. That's what makes, the family like a spiritual family.
Reminded a quote we often use from Paul Tillich, a Christian philosopher. He says that the first duty of love is to listen. And so it relates to the surgery for the appendix. Using as an example, Vishnu here. Yes, so that because we can say love is a feeling, and it's true with that. But Prabhupada would more often emphasize, as you're saying, love is an action, and related to key themes of your class, Guyamakiti Prichati, right? To reveal creating a space in relationships that's conducive, safe for inquiring confidentially, revealing the mind confidentially, the capacity to be a deep listener. So this is part of, let's call it like the currency. This is, if we break it down to the doing, there's the capacity to deeply receive and listen and to share impactfully. This is part of what love looks like, part of what love looks like. And again, not just to share our feelings for the sake of it, but to support each other in self-realization, in distinguishing who we are as not the mask, not the body, who we are as eternal spirit souls. And so I'm sure we reminded of that quote by Paul Tillich, the first duty of love is to listen. So whether It's a symptom.
Thank you.
It's a symptom. And that's, that gets at the foundation of so much of what we endeavor to do with all of the Software programs.
Absolutely.
To cultivate that capacity. And that's why, like the way I see that, and getting related to it, is like, it's not, this is like this can help the process of bhakti. This could be supplementary. No, this is essential. I appreciated so many things about you. I could give a whole class about what I appreciated.
I received.
But that you stress that, like, no, this isn't like, oh, it's like some obscure reference. You quoted Prabhupada, all the Chinese literature does, Babaji,
Yeah.
Bhagavatam. No, this is an intrinsic process of bhakti, and it's an intrinsic symptom of bhakti to cultivate excellence in all aspects of communication. Again, not just as some tools, but as fundamental for self-realization, God consciousness at the center of relationships.
Yeah, and the beautiful part about that I am reminded of that distinguishes activities in the mode of goodness, which are definitely good, from the pure transcendental platform, is that using the tools of the mode of goodness, when it's used for the purpose of trying to help yourself and others to come closer to Krishna, then it becomes really powerful. And then even if you're not expert at communicating, you're not expert at the techniques and tools, the fact that you're trying to approach Krishna means you'll get his help and you'll become spiritualized. So for example, opening up about where you're at, having integrity, speaking your truth, doing it in a way that doesn't do with masks and so forth, is good for everybody, anywhere. But what's really transcendental about that is when you do that for the sake of recognizing, oh, I still want to enjoy this world. These are my attachments. But this is also how I'm attracted to Krishna. And, looking at the difference between spirit and matter, I've realized after 41 years, I've tried to cram senses against sense objects and it's never made me happy. That's a Krishna conscious sattvic realization that nourishes one to come closer to Krishna. And doing that really puts Krishna in the middle and means that you're going somewhere. You're using these tools in this sattvic way aimed at Krishna, as all of our acharyas are showing, that aiming at Krishna and trying to be sattvic about things is what gets you out.
I like the focus on not being the enjoyer in relationships, not enjoying other people, not enjoying their attention on you, not being.
Can you turn the computer for us to hear?
Yes. You repeat?
Hi, I said I like the focus on not being the enjoyer in relationships.
Yeah. So Casey was saying that the point about not trying to independently enjoy, whether it's okay, that's fine. Whether it's like, for example, you give the example of enjoying the attention, right? Sometimes there's a way in which one wants to enjoy someone else, or one wants to enjoy being enjoyed by someone else. And in either case, there's this weird kind of mutually exploitative thing where you are actually placing yourself as, what in Sanskrit is called the Purusha, the enjoyer.
Because then it's bodiless.
Then it's bodiless.
I can never get enough of it.
Yeah, you can never get enough of it. It's impossible because it doesn't actually touch the soul, and it's a fundamentally incongruous and disharmonious position. We're made to enjoy, but not by trying to enjoy. Prahlad Maharaj says, as soon as you start in this prayer, so you sing it, 7th canto, the moment you start planning out how to gratify your senses, that is the moment your suffering starts. Not even doing it, just thinking about how I can enjoy this world for myself, that is the moment your suffering begins. Anxiety.
This is recorded. It's all live. Oh, okay, good. I've
There you go.
been wanting to take notes.
We are recording.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So
Just go.
it can be gross or it can be subtle. You know, you can be gross means like I just like an animal, take what I want. Unsubtle means like I'm a gentleman, but I'm in this thing to get something for my senses, whatever this thing is, whatever the relationship is.
So subtle enjoyment is sometimes categorized in three: desire for. I think they can hear me. So
Yeah.
Sorry. Desire. There's the gross enjoyment of the external senses, and subtle enjoyment, desire for profit, adoration, distinction, desire for. I want to be the most special. I want to be famous. I want to be adoration, distinction, profit. These are maybe more gentlemanly, less animalistic, but still material, and they also don't touch the soul.
Yeah. People who've gotten the most adoration and distinction have never been satisfied by that alone unless they were able to cultivate spiritual life. So yeah, thank you for that. Not trying. Gorky Shodas, Babaji's instruction is very powerful. Not trying to enjoy your wife, he said to the new groom. I wonder what that man was thinking when he came. Like, would he just get like a rubber stamped blessing us, have a good life? But he got such a heavy, powerful piece of instruction from the saint. Like, never try to enjoy your wife. She belongs to Krishna. You serve her with reverence. Okay. All right. Hare Krishna. More reflections or comments, questions?
The part about
Yes.
the human being in the story being very regulated, as opposed to somebody like Manny.
Yes, Manny's the dog who's here in the kennel, for those who are at home.
That caught my attention. But then it's also that like this concept of association being very powerful. Why is Manny, even though he's around like humans that are regulated, able to be mature, why is it not rubbing off on him?
Okay, so a reflection question. Good, I like it. Well, so there's in answer to your question, why is Manny the dog not fundamentally developing the way a human being would? The privilege of human life is that we are in this juncture. The human being can act like an animal, and they can act like an angelic being. They can act like a demigod. They can act saintly. They have that choice. The animals have some choices, but they have a lot less agency because of their situation materially. The same kind of soul is in the animal body. However, it's not that they can't make any advancement. If we want to associate with our dog and spiritualize a relationship, we can have the spiritual sound vibration of Krishna's names available for them to hear. We can offer up foodstuffs that are offerable to Krishna, vegetarian foodstuffs, and feed that to the dog or whatever. Water, offer up your water to Krishna and give offered water, prasadam. And unknowingly, because this verse says, even if performed without knowledge, the association with saints helps. The dog doesn't know what's going on in this room right now, not consciously, but the soul is getting benefited by hearing. This is the only dog in Alachua County. Well, maybe not. This is actually a very devotional county. I was going to say in a Bhagavatam class, but it's a small list. So there are ways, but it's generally without knowledge. There are some very far out examples in scripture and in culture and history. You can see even in the present day, animals that have clearly been like human beings taking birth in certain situations. They'll like make the trek to go to the temple every day and sit down for like class and take prasadam and go. There are elephants that do that. But generally, the animal life is much more structured. The super soul organizes your life in such a way you don't have as many choices. Human beings can choose to do really atrocious things and really divine things, and that's our privilege. We're like older siblings. An older sibling can take care of a younger sibling because they have more capacity, which means more responsibility. The parents trust them. You know, you can babysit, you can be home alone, you can do this, you can do that. So we can be stewards of the animals and plants, or we can viciously abuse them. We have the capacity for both because we've been given the option. That's our privilege. That's why Prabhupada is so firm in this point. Like, don't waste a life that you have. Animals don't have a choice. You have a choice. Take the choice to tamasima jyoti, go to the light. Don't stay in darkness. Engage in spiritual life because animals can't. And if you get that chance taken away from you, when the next time is, who knows?
So my question wasn't so much about dogs. Let's say like Many is a person,
Let's say he's a human.
but he's still unregulated.
Okay.
So why isn't the association rubbing off on him? Because it's supposed to be powerful, but then it's not acting in the intensity.
Why are we not seeing the symptoms?
Yeah.
Well, there are drops being, placed in the bucket, and it's getting to a certain place. There's a bank account of spiritual credit, and when it comes to a critical mass, then it manifests. It may not manifest in this life. It may not manifest in this life. It may not be a critical mass of sukriti, pious devotional credit, but they may choose willingly, in the face of a higher option, to engage in a lower option. They have that right. Love means I never force you to do the right thing. I give you the option. But the benefit of the devotional advancement is that there's no loss. At the end of this life, all the material things I've done, my fancy education, my whatever, all the weights I've lifted and by food I've eaten and money I've made, it's all gone. Zero. Can't do anything with it. But whatever I've done spiritually is with me. It's connected to me, like intimately. And so that unregulated being who perhaps doesn't or maybe will not manifest, saintliness in this life, carries what they carry with them. We started our class by saying, Thakur Bhaktivinoda made the point that devotional service begins with the mercy of the devotee. You can meet like a completely animalistic human being and give them like a morsel of prasadam and live the rest of their life like an animal. But that action is the most relevant action of their entire life. And it starts the cycle. If it's maybe the first time they've ever taken prasadam, for all we know, after so many lives. What happens next? It's up to Krishna and his internal energy. We may be involved in that, we may not be. But he is under that glance now. Now he has a dual existence, dual citizenship. Citizenship in the material world and pending citizenship in the spiritual world. Internal energy is looking at him. Devotees will continue to be sent. There's plenty of evidence for that, scripturally and also culturally. Does that help?
Well, I guess you're answering in a way I didn't think.
That's okay. You can clarify your question more if you want to approach it from a different angle.
So it's like you said again, like you're an average of the 5 people you know. So is it more that like you develop the qualities in the way you associate with them? You don't develop
to a degree, but this verse is saying that even if you don't know what you're doing, that adage I was saying that you're the average of the 5 people you know, it has to do with becoming in a way. It's that you'll become who you associate with. So maybe the animalistic person knows a great devotee, but they're not looking like one yet, but they will. They will.
So I end up online.
Yes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Mother Mamani, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you for your class. I found it very well organized. It was nice for my brain to follow all the trends. Sometimes I want to follow the trend of the mind of the speaker, so it was perfect. I really like that. I don't know who was speaking just before, and there is many things that's coming, and I'm making connection with what I wanted to share earlier. And about the association, I think the desire need to be there too, in some ways, for at least for the human form. For animal, the animal gets the credit, it prashadam, like that. And maybe the animal may change, and human being seems to, through the association, they can develop desire to associate with saintly people and rub on them. And if that desire is not there, it doesn't seem to be working as well. And maybe because they have the desire to be associating with worldly people at the same time. They have a desire to be associated with people who are famous, or people who are rich, or people who like them, or people who appreciate them, and then there is mixed desires, and there's they may not get all the profit of or benediction that come from associating with saintly people. And I was thinking about love. You spoke a lot about love, and
Can I reflect on your first point, and then we can hear the second one? I really appreciated it. That the animal can't engage with the mercy they're given, but the human being can. They can choose to. That's what I heard. That human being can choose to associate in an uplifting way, or with the uplifting persons, or with the persons who have very materialistic values. And association also has to do with how you open your heart, right? So which is not just like that you're there, but how much are you actually like bringing of yourself? Like when I visit family in Canada, I am always physically there. And to a degree, I'm functioning as their son and cousin and so forth. But when they express priorities that I don't agree with, I don't create a fuss or a scene, but I don't open my heart to their priorities and make myself available to take those in, because my heart has, I've given it to Guru, Prabhupada, Krishna, and there's parts of me that don't get offered. There's agency in that. I can choose to, and it's there's still something there with the relationship, but I'm choosing to where to give my heart. That's what I heard in your first point.
Thank you. Yes, I feel understood. I know, like my sense is the difference between animals and human being is like we are all souls, and Krishna, out of this desire to enjoy us, he gives us free will, because without free will there is no love. And so our capacity to use that free will is more uncovered in a human form than it is covered in an animal form. And that's really what it is. The free will is there. However, because we are not using it, and because we associate with material energy and the three modes of material nature, then that free will is covered more or less. And in the human life, we also, I want to connect, like, because you spoke a lot about love, and it's not like a devotee will need to love. It's just the love increase. The more spiritually advanced someone is, the more their capacity to love is increasing also, instead of decreasing. Mm-hmm. Some people think like spiritual people are less loving, and really the capacity to love is increased to the degree that love is free of the contamination of I and mine and what I want and the business or relationship. And and I was thinking also your other point about the spiritual credit. It's like we can see it. If we stay around enough, we can see some people, they touch on Krishna consciousness, and the next week they are chanting Hare Krishna 16 rounds, they give their life to Krishna.
Right.
And some people, they touch Krishna consciousness, and it takes decades sometimes to come to a place of really, okay, I'm doing that. Because, so we can see those credits that accumulated there, and how sometimes the soul is so fertile, and sometimes the soul needs to be dig a little bit more, and maybe it will be fertile next life, or maybe in this lifetime later on.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. I didn't want to interrupt you. Is that it?
I have so many points.
I'll just reflect back. I love that about your presence in class. This is just 2 days in a row I'm seeing, after meeting you for the first time, you're very engaged with the kata. I like that a lot. As somebody who speaks, it's so engaging to be around people who hear and are thinking deeply about the relevance. Just reflecting on what you said just now. The symptom of somebody who's spiritually advanced isn't that they love less, it's that they love more and they love better. It's much more about what is best for this person, instead of what can they do for me. Grossly or subtly, what can they do for me? That was in my experience, just even practicing bhakti in the preliminary, and I'm still preliminary, but 10 years ago when I was practicing bhakti, chanting 1 round a day, I could see that my relationships with my parents were getting better, right? Because it was breaking the mold of how I had related to them for, at that point, 30 years, right? And I wasn't like stuck in the karmic cycle of, thinking of my mom a certain way. I was much more patient with her. And it also helped her to see, well, that's a symptom that this person is doing something really spiritual with their life. Yeah, it does show up. It does show up. Thank you. More comments, reflections from you?
Yeah, I was thinking of what you were sharing about love and about the relationship and devotee's relationship with Kardama Muni. And I appreciated, I just read the third canto recently, so it's very fresh for me. And appreciated the way you presented, like she's really approaching her husband for the first time from a spiritual perspective, that before she was approaching him and serving, she had a lot of respect from the start that he was a great saint. She was attracted to him. She was a princess. She could have married so many rich princes who were shiny and everything. Kardama Muni was just sitting and doing meditation. So she had her attraction was for his spirituality. However, maybe she got lost, and then, like in a relationship, she didn't take advantage of it as much as she could. So I really appreciated you made that point.
Yeah, it's so real, because as you're saying this, I'm remembering, I haven't read the third canto in a little while, but yeah, she was raised in such a way that she appreciated spiritual culture. She asked to have a husband like him from her father. He presented that there's this sage, and so there was an arrangement made, and she was very much interested in him. For that is a quality that attracted her. But we can see that, there's an elaborate description of their love life. There's an elaborate description of their married life and the way that they gratified their senses. And somewhere along the way, she became distracted. That's the nature of the world. And yet she had that training and that purpose, that she came to her senses that, oh, wait a minute, like I didn't get the best thing. There's something more. Yeah.
Yes. And I wanted to go back to the point of animal life, and our conditioning make us want to be attracted by some people, and to see that this is my conditioning. And in spiritual life, attraction and attachment are really very well defined as the material traps. We trap ourselves to our attraction, because attraction is part of our psychophysical nature, of our conditioning in this lifetime, and nothing else. Our object of the senses. Maybe I don't like pizza. Many people like pizza, but I don't like pizza. And it's just, okay, that's my psychophysical nature, my conditioning in these lifetimes. And maybe there is thing I'm attracted to and thing I'm not attracted to. And to make that distinction between that kind of attraction that's really there from the animal kingdom, and spiritual attraction. And spiritual attraction, attractive to, or goodness attraction, attractive to things that maybe feel bitter at the beginning and then nectar at the end. And then spiritual attraction, really feel attracted to things that are conducive for me to be closer to Krishna, conducive for my sadhana bhakti, conducive for me making progress in spiritual life. I like those distinctions, and a distinction between attachment, like the object of attachment. And of course, Prabhupada say, of course, our children, our family life, they are object of our affection, but affection, love, and attachment are not the same. Well, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And the main thing I was trying to get at with this class is that because we're people fundamentally, either in a conditioned or our liberated state, we're made for attachment. It's either attachment to Krishna or it's attachment to his energy, one way or another. But by default, this world is full of people who are attached to his energy. So Bhagavatam is saying, hey, look, conditioned soul, look, you want a spouse, you want children, you want food, you want like all these things that people want, right? Do it in a way, like use that attachment so that it uplifts you. Don't just, first of all, don't think that having an attachment is irrelevant to your spiritual life. It'll degrade you if you do nothing about it. It'll just take you, it'll lead you by the nose around the universe. And you'll just stay there. You'll just be more and more confused and never leave. But if you're intelligently guided by spiritual wisdom, use the fact that you are attached. I have this, I like pizza. I have these flavors that I like to enjoy. And that is kind of arbitrary because it's all Krishna. Why would I choose something for me and other things I don't like? but use that and find the form of that can uplift you. Find devotees, be with devotees, for like craft your life in such a way that your attachments become engines for your upliftment. It is possible to do. It is a prerogative. Thank you. It's, I think, how long do we go, Prabhu?
Oh, it's only till 9:15, sometimes 9:30.
Okay.
So like if there's more discussion, we can go another 10-15 minutes if we choose.
It is 9:18. Do we have, I'm open. Do we have more?
I'm appreciating very much your course and everything that you're touching on. And the first time I read the or listened to the nature of instruction, I was triggered by almost everything in it. And one of them was associating with devotees, because at the time I was, I knew Sappatoga people, but I didn't have devotees in my home life at all. Like no one even spoke the word Krishna, the name Krishna ever. So I was triggered and angered and like, don't tell me I can't be around the people I love, and just because they're not devotees. And so I'm appreciating this in a way that is spiritualizing those relationships, because I'm blessed to have more and more devotees in my life now, and see how beautiful that is, and the association and how enriching it is to be with devotees, and how I can instead of having to move away from those who might degrade my process, it's nice to hear what love looks like and how I can apply that to my relationships in my life. And I mean, I've been told, yes, just give them prasad, but the way you've presented this, it's like a much deeper, richer, like really looking, like somebody said that to look at his life as a devotee of Krishna. And so to be able to really look at these people in my life who are struggling and see that spark, and really the way you presented it helped me like feel that, how to approach them with love and with prasad and with the ways that I can help uplift and spiritualize the relationships in my life. Just your presentation helped that like sink in and make more sense.
I'm gratified. Thank you. Yeah. And with,
I feel inspired. Thank you.
good. Yeah, on that point, I think it's important to differentiate between giving association and receiving association, because when we're talking about people who are like struggling with their senses, and we can give them association, we can give them like care, but we don't want to receive their priorities. We want to, as Prabhupada said, again, what is it, fish without getting wet? Catch a fish without getting wet. You know, do the thing that you're there to do without getting, spoiled along the way. And so while we're doing that, what we see here from Devahuti is she's asking to receive, like, Krishna, please, my husband, please give me that thing that'll nourish me. And that's a prayer. That's a very powerful prayer we can bring to our japa, to our lives, to our just meditation in our own heart. Krishna, like, I'm in this world, I need relationships. Like, I'm not going to go live in the mountains. That's not, an option. Please send me the people and the form of relationship that'll bring me to you. That is one of the classic prayers of our acharyas. That is one of the classic prayers of Bhagavatam. Let me stay in the association of devotees. Let me have devotees who understand me, are like-minded, want to help, are qualified to help, and please send them. That's his business. That's Krishna's business. He will reciprocate with them. So then on the one hand, you're being nourished. On the other hand, you're nourishing others who are a little bit less aware of their spiritual situation. And that way, you don't reject these other, your family and so forth and whatever, but your relationship with them is defined by your capacity to help them. And then what you need as a soul, you're getting from your maintainer spiritually. You're not being maintained by persons who, would be like me with Vishnu, like I love you, but I can't do anything for your appendix. So it's very sentimental. I love you. I can't help your spiritual situation. You're getting that spiritual help from others. But in my experience also, it really helps keep you balanced and whole. Otherwise, fanaticism can creep up. It can become like just artificially rejecting, or artificially and inappropriately like accepting their values and priorities and becoming reintegrated in the material state of forgetfulness because of not having like a life that supports and a structure that supports your upliftment, kind of putting everything falsely on the same level. It's a little bit of a, it's an interesting thing, giving association and receiving association.
Yeah, loyalty is like huge for me.
Mhm.
And so the idea of like moving only towards new people in my life, being devotees or spiritually uplifting people is nice. And it's but to leave anyone behind, it's so this is giving me how do I take that loyalty and not have to continue to inhabit the same relationship in the same way, but how do I
Yeah.
use that loyalty in a spiritual way?
Yeah.
Because I can't just move away, like I wouldn't feel right, it wouldn't be in my integrity to move away from others, so. Your presentation here is.
Yeah, it's something to think about, and it's definitely everybody has their own application in their life, and you can talk about it with the devotees you trust and see, you know, what does it look like for you? Everybody can do that for them. Everybody has
The
to.
Bhagavad Gita class at least once a week.
Oh, I mean, 100%. I was there for her reverse Bhagavad Gita class, and I felt inspired and uplifted.
I'm quite serious.
Yeah, Malini's smiling. I know she's into that idea. Yeah, she's nodding. You get a lot of mercy. I get a lot of classes. I can tell you, you get a lot of mercy because you surrender. Like, oh my God, I gotta help devotees come closer to Krishna. Wow, you get out of your own way. Krishna works through you. You get some help.
Like in this discussion, you know, in your exchange with Kelly, with like the need of the soul, so it all relates to like being honest, being sattvic, of kind of knowing where we're at, and getting the principle of association. That's a universal, inviolable principle. And then how, let's just respond to Kelly, and how to apply it.
Yeah.
That requires intelligence and sincerity.
Yeah.
And because, like, let's say with Srila Prabhupada, we could say in 1965, he was surrounded by devotees and he left devotee association and went to where there was no devotees. He went to Butler, Pennsylvania, New York, Pittsburgh, where he went there. Right, it's so at the same time, Prabhupada wasn't seeing there's no devotees in New York. Prabhupada's seeing all 13 million people in the New York metropolitan area. They're all devotees.
Yeah.
And I'm enthused to support them to realize that.
Yeah. He was qualified to act in that way. He wasn't sentimental.
Yeah. Yeah. He was an expert surgeon. He had all the degrees.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada had no propensity, no susceptibility to, I like the phrase used, to absorb their priorities. Like he wasn't going to, you know, the osmosis wasn't going to go in that direction. He's going to get influenced materially. He just had so much spiritual pure love to share, and he knew how to share. Yeah, he had the feeling and he had the expertise. He knew how to share it. So okay, so we want to follow that principle. At the same time, if we try to imitate that, then we'll just get more and more covered over and like that. So like it's like our responsibility to create and attract, to arrange our life to create and attract the association that's going to be consistently, steadily enlivening for our self-realization, our Krishna consciousness. And that includes, I like you made the distinction, receiving and taking includes receiving. And it also includes, it also includes giving. I don't know what that would look like with you, but I know you're doing it. You're doing it because after cultivation, you somehow inspired your mother to come to a self-intern program and this and that. Because, you know, basic ordinary saying with love, the more you give, the more you have. So, and I know that's important for me. That's important for me. That I'm sharing in a connected, empathic way. I'm sharing this transcendental knowledge, and when I create structures to do that, like this moment is right now is a time. So I'm sharing, and then I deepen my realization. So it's like it's our responsibility to see where we're at and what giving and receiving association structures is going to support and energize.
Yeah. What can I do with my situation right now? What's in my hands? What's
Yeah.
on my plate? And also, my realization is to a prayer, asking for that which you want from Krishna. Ultimately, He will move things for you, and then it's up to you again to make the active choice in that next moment, the next decision point, to take the mercy that He's handing you. All right. Are we complete? I mean, we're never complete. This is a perpetual reading. We're never going to stop reading Bhagavatam. Are we punctuating it with the break for now? Okay.
We can go to the next service, Prashadam.
Yeah.
Yay!
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
All the assembled devotees ki jai. Vanchakam Tripyascha. Kasum Devajim Vittanam. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. All right, Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Everyone, please take Prashadam.
Yeah, Prashadam, please. Jai.
It's a symptom of love.
Yes, it is. We just heard it. Bhunte.